Speaking of that, I mean, as you mentioned, we have banking scandals, we have a potential economic slow motion collapse taking place, right? We keep raising the debt for the United States, for example, but meanwhile the dollar is in a continuous crisis. Potentially, the destruction of the American empire. We've overstretched ourselves militarily. How do you see that fit into your picture of the global scheme? Let's say, is the idea to sink America like Atlantis was sunk in a sense? I mean, what's really taking place then?
Well, there's the much deeper level of this, which is where is it all coming from, and then there's the still a deep level compared with the mainstream, but the level that we can see, and on that level, I've been saying for years, Sean, that what is happening in America is being used to destroy America, because there's two things you really need to know, even on this what can be seen level, to really get a very fast grasp of many things that appear bewildering and unexplainable. One, where is this network trying to take the world? Two, what are the methods of manipulation they use to take us there? Once people get a grasp of that, they can go from 0 to 100 very quickly in their reevaluation of actually the world that they're living in. So if you take number one, where do they want to take us? When there's a few of you and you want to control the many, crucial to that constant increasing of your power over the many is the centralization of decision-making. The more diversity of decision-making we have, the less chance any central point or group has of controlling human life in any great or fine detail, because there's just too many points of decision-making for you to control. What you want is as few points of decision-making as possible, so in the end, there are a few people sitting around deciding what is happening globally. And that's the reason that they are moving us towards this structure of world government, world central bank controlling all global finance, world currency, which is a fundamental tool of control, and the world army, which is designed to impose the will of the world government. And we have a de facto world army now with NATO and the UN Security Council and all that stuff, and the G20. All these are proxy and pseudo world governments, world armies moving towards the goal that they want.
Even when Obama says that we're moving into Libya, for example, because of NATO, because of basically the NATO treaty supersedes congressional authority. So you see more and more the international scope of lawmaking and law and order.
Exactly. That's the technique that I call the totalitarian tiptoe, where you go in steps. You know you're going to Z or Z, as you say in America, and you're at A. But you know if your steps are too big, the change is so great so quickly that people look up from the game show or the sports and they go, what's going on? So you do it in steps that are as big as you can get away with, but not so big that you alert too many people of the fact that there's a pattern here. And so this stepping stones technique is massively effective in moving towards a goal, while each individual step is presented and promoted as completely unconnected to all the other steps.
Well, that's why most people were even oblivious in America. Most Americans are probably oblivious of the shutdown. The government was shut down for 2 weeks, and I think probably half the country didn't even realize it. That does indicate a tremendous shift in the consciousness from even the 60s, 70s time period to now. But what you're saying is fundamentally it's an old notion of the New World Order. I mean, that conspiracy was even talked about by Carroll Quigley in the in the 60s in his book Tragedy and Hope. I mean, this is a Georgetown professor who wrote about the centralization of power, the desire for the Anglo-American empire, one of concentration of wealth and banking. I mean, this is an old conspiracy, but it seems like your edition has been understanding the Babylonian bankster side of it, the Babylonian Brotherhood, as you call it. So the idea that this is something that's more ancient than just the British Empire or the American Empire.
Yeah. I'm very keen to come to that. I just let finish that point about America. That question you asked about what's happening with the debt ceiling and everything. If you want a world government dictating to every country, you cannot have any superpowers with the financial and military might to say no to you. You can't because you're not a world government. So the idea has been to systematically destroy America financially, and eventually militarily, so that it can be absorbed into this world government structure. So when you see, Sean, that the unbelievable amounts of money that are spent on the American military, when the American economy is in, like so many around the world, it is in such a state, and people are living in tent cities and they're losing their jobs, there is no sensible moral correlation between the suffering of so many Americans and places like Detroit and the amount of money that's spent on the American military. Now, this is the Rubicon. This is the line we need to cross to understand what's going on. That is not the American military. That is the military controlled by this hidden cabal, which is using the American military to play out its own agenda. And thus, when we see AFRICOM and all these comms structures that are being created, where the world is being broken up into different military units of the American military, that is merely a stepping stone to that structure being handed to the world government as a world army. It's not the American side of it is merely the stepping stone. That's not the end. And so at the same time, you have ludicrous financial decisions being taken where, I mean, the debt ceiling keeps being raised and keeps being raised and keeps being raised. I mean, the question is, where do you think this ends? How do you think this plays out in the end? When we drown in unimaginable debt that exceeds anything like the ability to service the interest, never mind pay back the debt, where does this lead? It leads to the eventual collapse of the American economy and thus the world economy. So what we're seeing, Sean, when we see the debt ceiling breached again, and it's always the same, isn't it? Oh, the debt ceiling's coming. Oh, and they have this pantomime, this farce, this drama, and you know that at the last minute, oh, pew, we come to an agreement, and they push it on. Every one of those debt ceiling breaches is a stepping stone towards the demise of the American economy, coldly and calculatedly. So they're using America to destroy America because they want to absorb America into the world government structure, which is what they're doing in the European Union, where I sit now. They are bringing the economies of Europe increasingly to their knees so they can be absorbed into this world government structure.